Now if we take a look at the view for add, this is a standard .NETNuke form. So we've got a div with a class of DNN form, and we have our DNN form items. So first we have our task, and again if we go back and take a look at our form, so our first field is task with a text field. Okay, so we have our label that uses our localization string to go get that prompt text, and then we have an ASP text box with an ID of txt task. We run on server, we set that, and now the way we hook this up with Knockout data binding is we just add a data bind attribute to our text box, and we say we want to bind the value of this text box to the view model property called task. And again, if we go back and look here, you'll remember we have a model property called task that's observable. So when the user enters a value in here, and tabs out of that field, as soon as they exit that field, Knockout is going to do that, execute that data binding, and this task property will contain that text from that text box because of this data binding. Okay. For the drop-downs, we have the task category. So again, let's take a look at this. You see the category, and then we have a drop-down list where we're going to display all of the elements from that Knockout observable array. So we want to bind that array of categories to this drop-down list. And the code is that it's a select, standard HTML select object. Give it an ID, and then we use data binding to get Knockout to populate that collection. We're going to data bind the options collection. So within a select, you've got options, and we're going to bind that option collection to the categories observable array on our view model. And again, categories is our observable array that gets loaded through our load categories function. We also continue with data binding for a select. In addition to telling it which observable array to use for the options, we then can tell it the properties of each item in that array to use for the text and the value of our selection. So the text is the which property of the objects that are in that array are we going to use for the displayable text that the user sees when they drop down the list, and when they select an item, what's the value, a current selected value, and that's going to be our ID property. So we've got the name property, and again if we look at our to-do list categories, we've got ID and name. So these are the models that are created by Knockout mapping, and they have the properties ID and name. And when we bind those categories to this drop-down list, we're going to display the name values, and when they select an item, the item that value is selected is going to be the ID property, and the value of this drop-down list, which is whatever the currently selected item is going to be bound to the selected category property of my view model. Again, I have for each of these drop-downs, I've got a collection, and I've got a selected property. So I have access to which item, and actually because we said we want to use the ID as the options value. So in each of these cases, this selected status, selected category, and selected person will be the ID value of the currently selected item. Okay, so that's our form. And let's take a quick look at the submit button. Knockout, you can bind many things, and in this case we've got a link button. We're using again the DNN form patterns. So we've got a DNN actions class, and we have the class for our submit button as DNN primary action. That gives us this standard DNN 6 look and feel through style sheets for the primary action and the secondary action, which is cancel. And we have our text, and then we can use data binding on our link button, and we're data binding the click event. So when the user clicks on this button, instead of doing standard link button behavior, we're telling through Knockout data binding for this particular button, when they click on it, when the click event happens, we want to execute the add task function of our view model. And again, so this is our add task function within our view model. So when the user clicks on submit, add task will be executed. Add task will create that post data, create the request object, make the post to our to-do list item resource URI, and our data will be added and will be redirected back to the list. And so let's just see all that in action. Okay, so this is a test task. We'll change this. We'll say this is miscellaneous. We'll assign it to our administrator, and in fact, we'll mark it as a closed item right off the beginning. So we've entered some text. We've selected some different items from our drop downs. We hit submit. Our data gets added, and you'll see here at the bottom now we've got our categories miscellaneous, the status was closed, the date and time that it was added. Here's our test task, and it's assigned to the administrator account. So that's it. That was a demonstration of how to use all of these technologies, Entity Framework, WCF Data Service, exposing those entity collections through their URIs, how to create an add form where you can enter some data, how to bind drop-down lists to lookup tables, how to build your post data, including those foreign key relationships, and posting that to the using the odata.request method to do a post, and have the data added to your data, and then back to your view. So hopefully that was a good demonstration of how to add. Next video we'll do edit and delete. Thanks for watching.